Hey, what's up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here. In today's episode, we are going to take a look at the new set Mystic Fighters. Specifically, we're going to take a look at the short printed cards from the set and try to guess where the card prices are going to be settling at. Now, I know that you guys are probably really eager to pick up the cards from the new set, build new decks and give them a try, but at the same time, right, we don't want to overpay for the cards at hyped up prices right at set release when we could very easily just like wait a week and buy the cards for like half the price. We're also going to take a look at a couple of the key important reprints that are included in the set, trying to actively look and identify what cards we should be trying to pick up and hold on to because they are likely to go up in the future. So yeah, let's get started guys. Okay, so really quickly to start off with, we're going to take a look at previously short printed cards in order to identify approximately what prices the short printed cards in Mystic Fighters are going to be settling at. So for cards to compare to, we're looking at those all holo sets and identifying the short printed cards from them. So we're taking a look at sets like Infinity Chasers, Fist of the Gadgets, Shadows in Valhalla, and the Secret Forces. So within those sets, in my mind, I break up those cards into different tiers. So tier 1, I would say, are for impactful cards that are like top tier meta decks, really strong. So like looking back, we've seen cards like Engage, Mechaba, and Brionac, which are key cards in top performing decks like Sky Strikers, Invoked, and Necros respectively. These are generally like the pricier cards from the set, typically sitting at a minimum of $30, although we have definitely seen cards like Brionac and Engage hit over $100 at their respective peaks. Now tier 2 is for cards that are good, but not quite game breaking, right? If we look at decks like Magical Musketeers and Evil Eye, Caspar and Surziel, those are cards like that are decent and the decks are decent, topping like a regional here or there, but they're not really like tier 1 decks. They're just kind of like rogue choices that people choose to play and do well with. We can also include cards here like Alistair the Invoker of Madness, which is a very useful, relatively generic Link 2 monster that has seen play in various decks, but it isn't necessarily a dominant card that needs to be in everyone's extra deck. Now these cards are still a bit pricier and do retain some value, being key cards in decks that people want to play, generally sitting anywhere between like $10 to $25 or $30. And then finally we have the tier 3 for cards that are short printed but really don't have any significance at all. So cards in this category are short printed cards that fit in decks that don't really have a lot of people wanting to play them, or they have had like zero competitive success. So don't get me wrong, I love Six Samurais and For Hire, and I guess like Cybers is really cool with some decent stuff, but none of the cards like Kizaru or Mayhem For Hire or Code Radiator were ever in particularly high demand and generally stayed pretty cheap. Of all the short printed secret rares, these are typically going to be the cheapest, always settling under the $10 price point after the initial hype from the set has died down. Alright guys, so on to the short prints here. Now a quick note before we get started, we're going to be looking at the short printed cards as they were covered in the House of Champs video, where he discussed the results of 10 cases of Mystic Fighters being opened. Now the cards we're discussing here were pulled noticeably less than the other secret rares in the set, so I am going to assume that that is going to be consistent for all the cases of Mystic Fighters moving forward. So first up, let's take a look at the Generaider short prints. We have two of them, Mardell, Boss of Light, and the Boss Stage, the field spell. So both of these are key cards included in the Generaider deck, Mardell being a searcher that can be summoned off of Lone Fire Blossom, and the field spell pulling a Generaider out of the deck and giving you tokens to abuse with the Generaider effects. So currently we are looking at $8 on the market for Mardell and $17 for Boss Stage. Now these cards definitely fit into the tier 3 category, as Generaiders definitely aren't going to be doing anything really to the meta. I mean, like, it's possible that they're going to see the occasional top or two, and those would probably be enough to cause the prices to jump up temporarily. But like ultimately in the long run, expect the prices of these cards to be fairly cheap as far as the price goes, because I think that these are like the short printed cards that will see the least amount of demand. I'm expecting Mardell to continue dropping to around $5, while Stage will drop even more, down to between like $10 to $12. Next up, we have Dragonmaid cards. So 2 secret rare Dragonmaids are short printed, those being Nurse and Kitchen. Nurse is the Altair that summons one from your graveyard, while Kitchen is the Yamato that adds and then discards a Dragonmaid. Now currently, we are looking at early prices of around $14 for Nurse and $23 for Kitchen. Now, as we discussed before, the Dragonmaid deck most likely isn't going to be very meta. It's definitely a rogue strategy at best. However, I think that we're going to see a much higher than usual demand for this tier 3 strategy because of how much demand I think there's going to be for the archetype. I think a lot of casual players are going to want to pick up Dragonmaids specifically because of the artwork, and that is going to cause the prices to settle at higher than what we would normally expect of an archetype of this caliber. I'm expecting Nurse to continue dropping, but stay between that like $10 to $12 price range, and for Kitchen to eventually settle between $15 and $20. Now these two are definitely extremely necessary cards for the Dragonmaid deck, with Nurse providing a lot of board presence and Kitchen helping to get your engine going. So if people want to play Dragonmaids, they're definitely going to need 3 of each of these cards, which is most likely going to keep their prices a bit on the higher side. The last archetype that we have is Mathmech, and this is where things got kind of weird in terms of prices. So apparently the 2 Ixies from the Mathmech archetype are short printed, which I found kind of interesting because neither of them is like a very necessary card in pure Mathmech builds, at least in the Mathmech OTK variants that I've been primarily looking at. However, I suppose in theory, they are among the better, more generic options from the set, as they can be utilized by any deck that makes rank 4 monsters. Specifically, Alimbertian allows any deck that can spit out 4 level 4 monsters to search for any spell or trap card from the deck, which I guess is potentially pretty nice. So at the moment, we are currently seeing Laplacian at only $2, which is really strange for a card that is supposedly going to be short printed. I don't know if this was a mistake in the reporting, or people have been pulling more than they were expecting to, or it's just people thinking that Laplacian isn't really a very good card, which is kind of true. But the other thing we're seeing is Alimbertian sitting at $63. Now, it only has a market price of about $27, but the cheapest current available price for Alimbertian is $63. I suppose that the reason for this is that it's somewhat of a generic Xyz monster, so people might consider it like a staple option in rank 4 decks. But I definitely think that this is a very highly inflated price, an overreaction to the news that the card is short printed. As for where I think it'll settle, I do think that Laplacian, if it really is short printed, it's going to be more between like $3 to $5. If not, it's going to be like a $1 card. I don't really see Mathmech doing anything, and even if they do, this probably isn't going to be an extremely key card in the deck. And then for Alimbertian, like the best thing that I can compare it to is Alistair the Invoker of Madness, because it's like that somewhat generic extra deck option that different decks can use, but are not required to use. I think that people are paying too much attention to the fact that it can search any spell or trap card, and then not paying attention to the fact that this card is pretty impractical to make in order to use that effect. Like a $60 price point would be comparing this card to something like Psyframe Lord Omega, and this card is nowhere near as good as Omega is. Rather, I think that the card is going to be settling within a few weeks to between $20 to $25, and then eventually even lower than that, settling at around $15. Okay, so apparently it's not just the secret rares that have short prints. There are also super rares that are short printed in Mystic Fighters as well. So it's important to keep these cards in mind, because like a lot of the time with sets like these, we're so focused on just the secret rares that we overlook the supers, where some of them might actually be valuable. So from what I could see, there are 5 new cards short printed in the set. Now 3 of them are Dragonmaids: Hospitality, which is the Reborn card, Parlor, and Laundry, so the 2 smaller Dragonmaids, and these are among the better cards in the Dragonmaid archetype. So if you pull any of these cards, be sure to set them aside, because they'll likely retain some value, and you're most definitely going to find people who are looking to pick up copies of these cards. So next, Hela, Boss of Doom, is a Generaider monster that allows you to tribute a Generator or zombie to summon a Generator or zombie from your graveyard. So this is really cool support for zombies in general, but also allows you to grab another another Generaider from your graveyard in Generaider decks in order to use its effect to abuse the tokens during your opponent's turn. And then finally we have Mathmech Edition. At first I was kind of confused about like why this card was short printed, but then I realized that technically, like looking at this card, it is generic cyber support since it doesn't say that you need a Mathmech or anything in order to summon it. It just locks you into Cybers monsters for the rest of the turn, but it gives you that extra extender on the board. So yeah, these are definitely among the key cards from each of the archetypes, so it does make sense that they are a bit harder to find than the other super rares. Definitely be sure to keep your eye out for them and set them aside if you do pull them. And finally guys, let's take a look at some of the key reprints from this set. So I was a little bit disappointed about some of the reprints because I feel like there was a lot of potential for some pricier cards to be reprinted here. Now among the 20 reprinted cards, the only reprint of an expensive card here was Fire Fist Dragon, which was definitely cool to see because it was like that really expensive card that was preventing people from building Fire Fists after the Fists of the Gadget set. Lone Fire Blossom was also printed here again after being reprinted in both Fusion Enforcers and one of the Astral Packs as a common, but it was still worth like always a couple dollars, right? Lone Fire is one of those cards that always seems to be worth something no matter how many times it gets reprinted, kind of like Allure of Darkness or Gold Sarcophagus. Dark World Dealings is another card that always seems to be worth a few bucks, even the common versions. It's frequently played in a lot of those degenerate turbo strategies that just tries to like dig through your deck really quickly, like Exodia or other FTKs, so the quantities always seem to disappear from the market. This card will probably be fairly cheap at first, but most likely will naturally go back up in price over time, so it's definitely something that I would be holding on to a few sets of. And then finally, Balancer Lord is a generic Cybers monster that functions as 2 extenders, providing an extra normal summon while it's on the field, and then summoning another monster from your hand when it's banished, depending on what we see from other Cybers archetypes moving forward. This could be a very useful extender in some strategies. Now, as with a lot of reprint sets, we expect people to overlook these cards and be willing to get rid of them along with their bulk or for fairly cheap, so you guys should be aware and try to hold on to a few extra sets of each of these cards if you're able to. Alright guys, that is it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I really hope that this helps to give all of you a clearer idea of what you should be paying for the various short printed cards from Mystic Fighters. Like honestly, it really sucks to buy a card for like full retail price when you have the price cut in half, like literally a week later, and you could have gotten 2 copies of the exact same card. I know how that feels, I've done it, and I don't want that to happen to you guys. But yeah, that is it from me for today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a thumbs up, and of course subscribe to MST.TV if you haven't already. Check out Tom Box's box opening video, which he posted earlier this morning, and of course be sure to leave a comment down below about what cards you guys are looking to pick up for yourselves from Mystic Fighters, be it an archetype or individual cards that you're investing in. And yeah, until next time, please don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.